Welcome to The Market That Moves America, a podcast from the National Center for the Middle Market. The center is the leading source of knowledge, leadership, and innovative research on the middle market economy. Throughout our podcast, we will feature middle market leaders and stakeholders to hear their real-world perspectives on trends and emerging issues.
Welcome to The Market That Moves America. My name is Doug Farren, Executive Director of the National Center for the Middle Market, located at The Ohio State University Fisher College of Business. For our 14 plus years of existence, we've been studying middle market companies, and we often collect data on their performance, but very rarely have we had the chance to look at how that performance is achieved and the way that leaders think about making trade-offs in their decision making and the process upon which they go about making them. I'm very excited about today's episode because we recently partnered with CBIZ, who is one of the nation's largest professional service advisors, on a recently released research report on this exact topic. Joining me today is the Chief Executive Officer of CBIZ, Jerry Grisko, and their Chief Financial Officer, Brad Lakhia. Jerry, Brad, welcome.
Good morning, Doug.
Hi, Doug. Good morning.
So, Jerry, as a starting point, for those who may not be familiar with CBIZ, can you just give us a little bit of background on the business?
Sure, Doug. About 30 years in existence, and we, with offices coast to coast, so across the country, CBIZ is the leading provider of professional services to the middle market, the very clients that you survey in your good work. We help clients discover new ways of growth. As you can imagine, with that number of clients in a broad array of services, we have deep knowledge into those client base, and we have a lot of data. So we provide to our clients data-driven insights that help them grow in ways that they may not always see on their own.
And just as a follow-up, Jerry, why do you see the middle market as such a critical segment for CBIZ? What's the kind of the unique aspect of these companies?
Yeah, well, first of all, it's a very large total addressable market, as you know, over 400 billion, kind of measured in the middle market. The characteristics of those businesses are that they are really good at what they do, but they're oftentimes underserved by their advisors. So, you know, if you're Fortune 500, Fortune 1000, there's a lot of advisors that will serve you. Many of the smaller businesses tend to be more DIY, but that middle market business has resources. They choose to invest those resources in their core business, and they turn to advisors like CBIZ to help them with their most important decisions. Things like plant expansion, large capital projects, acquisitions, navigating complex regulatory environments, and eventually, when succession comes, and oftentimes they're transferring these businesses to the next generation, we help them with their most important decisions there as well. So we are with these businesses over a long period of time. They rely on us, and we can bring great value to the relationship.
Yeah, that's a great point. We've seen time and again how valuable trusted advisors can be to these companies. So the three of us had a chance to meet last year with our dean, AC. We talked about ways that we could possibly work together. So Brad, I just wanted to ask you, what was the interest for CBIZ in collaborating with the National Center for the Middle Market?
Yeah, thanks, Doug. It was kind of, I guess, a great coincidence is the way I would characterize it. I joined CBIZ about a year ago as CFO. Jerry brought me in as the CFO. And obviously, as I came into CBIZ, understood our focus on that core, real critical middle market, that underserved middle market. I'm also a Buckeye. I'm also a Fisher alumni. And so as I been quite active, or more active, I would say, over the last 5 to 10 years as an alumni of the Fisher College of Business, I made this connection of, the National Center for the Mid-Market, which you've led for, really since its inception, back to CBIZ and our focus on the middle market, that underserved middle market, and a really fast, rapid growing middle market that's so core to not only the global value chains, but so core to the U.S. economy. So that's really the connection, Doug. And so, our discussion with you and AC is a big part of why we're here today. So really appreciate the partnership.
Yeah, I think it's a great fit. I mean, for all the things that Jerry described, and then of course our focus, I'm very excited about this project. So let's dive in a little bit into the research study. The name of the study is The Trade-Off Economy: How Decision-Making Mindsets Shape Middle Market Performance. We had a great working team assembled late in the fall. We surveyed 400 middle market businesses across a number of industries, and I'm very excited about some of the insights that emerged because, again, it's not often that we've had a chance to kind of peel back what is in the thought process of a lot of these middle market owners and leaders as they go about growing and managing their companies. So, Jerry, I'll just go back to you. When you think about the high-level research insights, what are some of the things that stood out to you?
Yeah, well, first of all, the work itself. Oftentimes you see reports on outcomes, but it's really what's underlying those outcomes. How were those decisions made that resulted in those outcomes? And I really was excited about the research, and we learned a lot through the research. And so what we learned is that there are really predominantly 4 mindsets that business owners and business executives use. Of course, we're all always striving for growth. So I think the number one factor and the one that rated the highest was as to how they make decisions is a desire for growth. So what do I need to be doing? Where do I need to be making investments to continue to grow? But there are some macro and micro indicators as well. And it starts with really confidence. So before they grow and the extent of their growth, they also have to measure how confident they are to do that in a particular environment. Obviously, is the business climate favorable, less favorable? Are there macro conditions that might impact that? And then they have investment priorities, right? Do I invest in people? Do I invest in processes? Do I invest in technology? So it's kind of force ranking where those priorities are. And then the last one, of course, always comes into it is their kind of tolerance for risk, right? So with every investment decision or every kind of key shift in a priority, there's risk connected with that, and every organization has different risk tolerance, right? So it's really those 4 kind of decision mindsets that was insightful for us.
Yeah, and this forces leaders to make certain trade-offs. I mean, the center has been talking for years about the fact that a lot of middle market companies can be resource constrained, and they're forced to make decisions that affect their business. Why is it so important to understand these trade-off decisions?
Well, it tells you at its core what they value most, right? So they might say, "Look, we're committed to growing our top line, and of course margin expansion, and everybody's committed to their people." But under pressure, you see where those decisions are really made, right? So what are they willing to protect? Like when they have to make those choices, what are they most committed to protecting? What are they willing to sacrifice, right? Because if they have to make force rank things, they're going to sacrifice some things in order to protect others. And then it's really kind of how those things play out under pressure. And we're seeing a little bit of that. We saw a little bit of that in 25 as the economy was a little tighter than it had been over the prior couple of years. We saw some shift in those priorities. From CBIZ's perspective, what that tells us is where we can focus our advice and our assistance and our support to those businesses. Because oftentimes those decisions are impacted by, their financials. Do they have the capital to invest? Access to capital? Their operations, are they operationally ready? Because you have to have the foundation under you in order to scale on top of that. Included in that is technology. Are their systems and processes mature enough for them to make those investments? And then again, their tolerance for risk. So it helps us shape how we can really bring greater value to the client relationship as well.
Right. So, Brad, one of the key findings of this work was that growth opportunities have such a outsized influence on the decisions that these leaders are making, especially when you compare it to everything else. Take things like, geopolitical issues, seeing that right now in the world, regulatory risks, policies and other things that might impact the business, for example. Do you think this optimism around growth is well placed for middle market businesses?
Well, I think the research showed that growth is really the number one factor for, I believe 30% of the companies that responded. So 30% of the 400 respondents. And it stayed in even those where it wasn't the top factor. All 4 of the other mindset categories had it as a top 3, right? So I don't think it's well placed. And I think if you think about business and you think about value creation, growth is core, right? Jack Welch said, you can't grow long term unless you can eat short term. So I think this comes back to the trade-offs, right? So the short term trade-offs, when you're in environments where there might be uncertainty or where an industry might be getting disrupted by technology or other competitors who are new entrants, I don't think it's misplaced. I think it really comes down to discipline, right? And it comes down to, not should we grow, but how do we grow and how do we do it responsibly? How do we, stay focused on the core of where we are, where our strategy is as a company, and then do it effectively, right? Allocate the right resources and have what I would characterize as an integrated approach to growing and planning, right? Integrating from a financial planning perspective, from a capital allocation perspective, from an operations perspective, and really harnessing the resources that you already have and kind of expanding from there.
So does that pursuit of growth create maybe new risks or exposures that these companies have to manage? And if so, how does that integration help address those risks?
Yeah, so I think an integrated approach drives that discipline, right, Doug? So to the extent that you're really disciplined around what you're doing, you have the right project mindset around growing, making investments, starting with talent, making sure that you have the right people leading those projects with the right level of subject matter expertise. And then to the extent you don't, you're going out and seeking those partnerships where you need to. So you're seeking an advisor like CBIZ to come in and say, listen, there's a piece to this project that we may not feel like we have covered well. It could be a compliance piece. It could be a funding piece. And making sure that you have the right partners and the right minds there at the table to really help you navigate that growth project and that transformation you're trying to drive.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to stick with you, Brad, because I think this is a really good CFO focused question. But, in our time studying mid-sized companies, we've seen, there's a real struggle around thinking about these trade-offs. And as companies are looking to grow, they're also looking to do that in the most efficient way possible. And so in a situation where access to capital may be constrained, which we see that time and again as well, it often is for a lot of these businesses, where are you seeing some of the highest return on investment right now for the middle market?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, Doug. I think we're, across all industries, all spaces, technology is really the area where I think we're going to continue to see the highest level of ROI. And so I think not only for CBIZ, we see it the same way, our clients see it the same way, we see it as an opportunity for CBIZ to serve those clients. But I also would say it comes back to discipline, right? Technology and the return on technology investments is critical. The success is critical when you have the right foundation for it, the right data infrastructure, the right digital literacy among the people who are actually utilizing it, having to operate it. So I would say technology remains, at the forefront. But there's some of the old, more tried and true, things around operational efficiency or operational kind of quality, and go to market, right? Don't ever lose focus on who your customer is, how you want to serve those customers, the products and services they need. So stay true to that kind of go to market, customer client mindset, and work market back from there.
Are there other areas that you might see companies maybe over-investing or under-investing in that again, may raise challenges for them down the road?
Yeah, I think, Doug, it's probably not a question of like over-investing or under-investing. It's the right spend, right? It's the right spend focused, again, in a disciplined manner around, what is your core go-to-market strategy? Who are you serving? What's that total addressable market? Where are the market opportunities and the segmentation within that total addressable market? And really staying kind of core, true and core to that part of your business and your strategy. So I think it's not so much underinvestment, overinvestment. It's the real targeted discipline, a right spend, durable spend, and staying fairly consistent to what your strategy is and where that investment needs to take place.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, Jerry, back to you. We talked, a little bit about these 4 decision-making types. The 2 that were the fastest growing in terms of year over year revenue, the centralized and decentralized accelerators really had a few things in common. I mean, we saw that they clearly invest in their talent and their workforce. But second, that they're pretty nimble when it comes to their decision making. And I want to talk to you a little bit about that second component, because as we know, middle market companies are really at that sweet spot where they're well positioned to pivot and take advantage of opportunities. So can you tell us a little bit about what enables that speed for middle market companies? And then maybe what are some of the challenges that might slow things down?
Yeah, I would say speed is really a byproduct of clarity. So where they have clarity in their priorities, so they've worked on the business, not only in the business, and worked as a team to set clear priorities. That's kind of a table stake. Decision rights, right? So the delegation of decisions and the accountability for those decisions is a critical component there. Brad mentioned data. You have to have good information to make the good decisions, right? So having reliable data. And then I think is just kind of trust in what we would call the operating model or the infrastructure, right? Do you have enough confidence in what you've built to be able to build on top of it, right? So I think those are the things that if you have clarity in those areas, priorities, decision rights, data, and your operating model, I think you then can make quicker decisions and be more right than wrong in making those decisions. Yeah. The opposite side of that you asked about, I would say too many decisions get escalated. So where there isn't clear kind of hierarchy and accountability for where decisions lie and comfort in the people making those decisions that they can make them and own them. And then I would say outdated systems where we talk about some underinvestments. When you see businesses that have deferred maintenance, I would say, and underinvested in some of their systems, that slows their ability to scale and grow and make decisions. And kind of the opposite of what I've said before, poor data, unreliable data will get you in trouble every time, right? So sure. It prevents you from making an informed decision.
Sure. Well, let's talk a little bit about industries. I think one of the fascinating things about this project was we had a chance to really focus in on three key industries in the middle market, and those were real estate, construction, and in consumer and in industrial products. And we saw, particularly a third of all the respondents fell into this category that we called performance protectors. So they're really sensitive to risk when they're making a lot of these decisions. And construction companies, for example, were one that tended to over-index into that group. So, Jerry, I'll just stay with you here for a second. Any companies that might fall into that type of mindset when they really are more sensitive to risk and not maybe overly aggressive in their pursuit of growth, is that kind of caution helping them right now or potentially holding them back?
Well, I don't think there's any one right answer, right? I don't think you can ever be too cautious, but you have to be prudent, right, in your business decisions. And the reason those businesses fall into that category, it's logical, is because they're typically project-based. They're oftentimes very highly dependent on a point in time as to the business conditions, access to capital, what their competitors are doing. So, they all those things impact their margins, so they tend to be margin sensitivity. They get those decisions wrong at a point in time, it can materially impact their margin. They have a lot of cost volatility, think raw material supplies in what they do, and there's execution risk. So I wouldn't say that they're wrong in being kind of performance protectors, but I think you also need to always be playing the long game, right? So the businesses that are really kind of growing through all cycles are sensitive to all the things we talked about, but also confident enough, again, and have those other items that we talked about earlier, good data and accountability and decision-making rights. They've lived through enough cycles that they're confident enough that they can still be investing forward. And those are the ones that are going to be long-term successful.
Sure. And the other factor could be size, right? I mean, the middle market is so diverse. The center defines it as businesses between 10 million and $1 billion in revenue. So as you think about how companies move from that lower or even emerging middle market into the upper tiers of the middle market, how does this decision-making maturity evolve? I'm sure it has to, right? You've got more scale, you've got more resources. Tell us a little bit about that, Jerry.
Yeah, again, you're right on it. As you would expect, larger companies have greater access to capital. So their financial capacity allows them to make investments that smaller companies may not be able to make at a given point in time. They also have, as you understandably, deeper talent pools. They not only have larger organizations, but they understand the importance. If they've been able to scale, they've been able to do it because of their talent, and they understand the importance in investing in people. And I will say, kind of from the underinvestment side, you asked that question to Brad before. Where we see some underinvestment from time is not necessarily in the people, the talent, but the continuous upscaling and development of their people. And scale allows for that too, right? The large organizations have more mature organizations and commitments to upskilling and continuously improving and training and developing their people. So that's a critical factor. And then I think all of those things, if they're larger, they've probably lived through some cycles. And so it gives them greater confidence in the long-term kind of prospects for the business if they make the right decisions and are investing in certain ways. So I think that's what scale gives you. And it shifts. It shifts that when you have that scale, it shifts your decision-making from kind of protecting that near-term performance, like every decision could be critical to the longevity or the life cycle of the business, to managing kind of more informed or making more informed decisions around long-term growth and objectives, right? So I think scale gives you that mature organizational maturity to allow you to do those things.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Doug, I would add too, we talk about the larger scale, you gave access to more resources, more capital. But with more capital, it also has, you're contingent on who's your investor, right? Is it your capital, or is it is it an investor, an equity investor, or a debt investor? So as you grow and scale, your capital structure probably becomes more complex, most likely. And so the demands that your investor base have it also has an impact on where you're making decisions and where you're allocating resources, short-term versus long-term. So I think that's a factor. And it's certainly a factor that, at CBIZ, we help our clients navigate as they are growing, what type of capital they get access to, how do they think about securing it, and then the trade-offs between the different types of capital.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Jerry, what do you think people get wrong about the middle market? What are the misconceptions that you often hear about this set of businesses? I have my own point of view, but I'd love to hear what you see from where you sit.
Yeah, I would say, first of all, I don't know if they get it wrong or it's misconceptions, but I don't know that they appreciate how resilient it is, right? That middle market. So CBIZ, nearly 3 decades in business, and that is our client base, right? That middle market client. And we've seen them outperform market conditions kind of almost through every cycle, right? So what allows them to do that? First of all, their level of sophistication. And I have a group of business leaders that I meet with on a regular basis. And I always walk away really impressed with how well they know their business, how studied they are in their business and their industry. So very sophisticated group, entrepreneurial, of course, oftentimes. So they're willing to make informed risk and to invest forward. They're very well steeped in their industry. Again, they know not only where they play and where they can stake out their space in their industry, but they know their competitors really well too, right? And they're always studying the competitive landscape. And then where they are resource constrained, they know they have deep resources from outside advisors, companies like CBIZ, that can fill in the gaps because they realize they know their strengths and they know where they don't have strengths. And they're sophisticated enough to be able to go out into the market and identify those trusted advisors that can help them fill in the gaps that they may have on their team. So,
okay. So I want to pose this to both of you, kind of put take out your crystal ball. And as we think about heading into this year and into the future, what are some of the things that both of you find most exciting and or maybe most concerning as you think about middle market businesses across the country, the issues, challenges they're facing, but also maybe some of the opportunities that they have at their disposal?
Yeah.
Well, listen, I would say, Doug, I remain tremendously impressed at the resiliency of the middle market, right? I mean, you have the stats, you know them better than me, but I think the middle market, it continues to grow at a pace greater than 10%. I don't know exactly what the numbers were exiting 2025. I know your report's out, but I think it was greater than 10% once again. And that was coming off of a year where, particularly in the front half of 2025, there was a lot of unexpected uncertainty, right? And so the just the durable nature of the middle market. And I think there's an underappreciation for the U.S. middle market and how important it is to the global value chains that it serves. It's really a B2B market, right? Most of the middle market is really more of a B2B type market. So I think the resiliency, the durability of it is the thing that continues to impress me. It also, creates an opportunity for investment. So as you think about how it's, I think, still one of the fastest growing parts of the U.S. economy. So again, as we now are in the front half of 2026, in some ways there's some similarities, different situations, albeit where we're now experiencing some unexpected uncertainty. So I think the middle market will once again be able to navigate that successfully. So that's my response to your question. I'll offer Jerry his thoughts.
Yeah, listen, I see it the same way. Brad mentioned, kind of the global aspect of it. I would say from a domestic standpoint, it is the backbone of our economy, right? When you think about how large that total addressable market is at, again, over $400 billion, the number of businesses that are always kind of growing from what we would consider a small business into that middle market is the kind of never ending. I think the resilience of that segment of the business. I will say that, you can't have a conversation today without talking about AI. I think AI will reshape every business and how we conduct business. And I think I'm excited to see how the middle market embraces technology. I will tell you, we, CBIZ, and I myself have been involved in a number of symposiums lately with middle market businesses, and I'm very impressed with how quickly they've come up the learning curve on fundamentally what AI can do for their businesses and specifically within their industries and their businesses. So I have high hope.
Yeah, we agree with that. Our latest middle market indicator survey showed that AI was the number one investment target for these businesses. Almost 30% of the companies are focused on that for this year. So, Jerry, if there's a middle market CEO listening to this, what's one trade-off that you would suggest they go and revisit or maybe think a little bit more about for their company?
Yeah, I would always say, so many of all businesses and certainly middle market businesses are resource constrained. So you tend to work in the business and less on the business. So I would say find time, weekly, monthly, quarterly, set time aside to work on the business. I would then say it's kind of success by design, not by chance, right? So have a clear plan. And in that plan, you would always want to ask yourself, what are you protecting today that will limit your growth in the future, right? So if you thought we're in this for the long game, what's it going to take for me to be long-term successful? We can't get too focused on the here and now. Of course, we have to live in the here and now, but stay focused on what's going to drive long-term growth. And then I would say, lastly, they do it anyway, but continue to invest in your people. And more than just the person, it's kind of the upskilling of that person and the development of that person. Technology, obviously, is always front center and operations, right? Make those investments so that you don't find yourself with deferred maintenance.
Right. So, Brad, we now have this report study. We've got a little bit more intelligence around these decision-making types, but what do you think will really separate the best performing companies over the next, certainly the balance of this year, but even the next 12 to 18 months across the middle market?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of what Jerry commented on around making sure that you're prioritizing the right investments in your people, your processes, your systems, staying focused on the fundamentals, right, of your business, making sure that you are really examining your core strengths and flanging those core strengths up against the moats in the addressable market that you're serving and where the growth opportunities are within that market that you serve, and never ever losing sight of your core customer, where you go to market, the customer and the clients you serve. I think that will continue to differentiate all great performing companies.
And Jerry, if we were to revisit this study in a few years, let's go out, collect more data, revisit it. Do you think it would look much different? Would you anticipate any changes or adjustments to the work that we did here?
No, I really don't. I think that the foundation for what we've learned through the study around how decisions are made will probably be much the same into the future. I think as each business then thinks about how they fall within those categories and how they're making decisions and therefore how they're making investments for the future growth, I think those that are, again, proactively working on the business will look much different 3 or 5 years from now than those who might have not been focused on those things. So understanding how you make decisions, understanding what's the trade-offs are, understanding what your priorities are, having clarity around those priorities, clear accountability, and intentionality, I think will result in a different outcome for those businesses that are focused on those things.
Yep, that makes sense. Well, this has been absolutely wonderful conversation. I mean, it's very clear why this was such a powerful collaboration. I mean, clearly we share the same focus on the middle market, but I think, based on what we talked about today, we speak the same language too when it comes to the challenges and opportunities. And I think what's so powerful is, the center really focuses on bringing issues to light, and then it's the trusted advisors like CBIZ that really help deliver the solutions and the plans that can help bring these things to life and continue to help support these companies. So, Jerry, Brad, I just want to thank you for your time and really appreciate you being on the episode today.
Thank you, Doug. Appreciate the partnership and appreciate participating in the program.
Likewise, Doug. Thanks for the opportunity.
Wonderful. Thank you. So to download the report, you can visit the center's website at middlemarketcenter.org. You can download the study, read more information, and get more detail and data around the survey findings and the research study. In addition, to learn more about CBIZ, you can visit their site at cbiz.com. Thanks, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you for listening to The Market That Moves America. Never miss a new episode by subscribing anywhere podcasts can be found. You can also subscribe to our email newsletter at middlemarketcenter.org.